We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Welcome to Mostly Horror. Mostly. I'm Sean, and I'm Sean. It's just me today, guys. Steve is off in fucking Germany or something. Steve has this skill that I have always admired in him. He's had it my entire time knowing him, but this skill of just injecting himself into things that he wasn't initially invited to. It's gotten him so many opportunities throughout his life, from suddenly touring with bands to starting clothing companies to the job he has now to our podcasting guests. He's just really good at talking to the right person at the right time in the right way, and stuff happening from that. And I guess this time his boss had a work trip that he needed to go on in Germany, and Steve said, well, if you need any help. And next thing you know, Steve is on a company, all expenses paid vacation over there. I don't know if it's actually all expenses paid. I'm pretty sure most things are covered for him. And I'm also sure that it's not actually a huge vacation. He's probably doing a ton of work that he is going to tell us all about next week when he is home. But for now, Mom's not here, guys. It's just us. Kick off your shoes or leave them on in the house. Who cares? All right. She's not here to nag us. I personally snuck into the the liquor cabinet and stole some of her booze. I've not been drinking that much this year. I'm very proud of that. My mind and my liver need that. But today I decided on like my third or fourth take trying to do this episode that I needed to go get a little something. I had some leftover rum from the birthday fiasco party that we had for me and Steve recently, and I went and got a Coke and decided I'm going to pour that, and hopefully that'll help me get through this. So, in summary, Steve is the reason that I drink. All right, he left his obligations, and so I had to break edge. Is basically where we're at. We got a great episode for you guys this week. We are talking to writer director Ariane Louis-Seize. That's about as good as my fumbling American tongue is going to be able to say it. It sounds much better when she says it. And I can also tell you that we do not say it correctly when we introduce her in the interview. We did our best to inform ourselves and watched other people saying it and interviews and things like that. But I, just before recording this, found another interview where she says the full thing, and it sounds great, and it sounds kind of like what I just said. But yeah, Ariane, who is the writer and director of Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person, which is such a cool name. Oh, it's so cool. If I remember correctly, me and Steve talked about it briefly a few episodes back and talked about how we were excited about it and how we definitely have to see if we can get somebody on. And here we are. We've made our dreams come true. But we will talk about Ariane and her movie very soon. But first, let's get into some things you probably already know.
I'm sure you already knew that.
You only tell me stuff I already know.
You already know what I'm going to tell you.
Guys, I am very excited to say that I have just recently found out about a new project called Heart Eyes that I am claiming right now is a Mostly Horror alumni crossover with two of our past guests, Josh Rubin and Christopher Landon. That is Josh Rubin, obviously, who wrote and directed Werewolves Within. He stars in A Wounded Fawn, and he's in Scare Me and a bunch of other stuff. If you haven't looked into Josh yet or checked out our past conversation with him, you should absolutely do that. And then also Christopher Landon, who I excitedly associate as being the son of Michael Landon from Little House on the Prairie, which I grew up watching with my grandma, so that means a lot to me. Chris also has worked on a bunch of projects that I care about. If you haven't looked into Chris, you should definitely do that and go listen to our episode with him. He worked on, the Paranormal Activity franchise. He co-wrote and directed Freaky. He was set to work on, the latest Scream movie, but then all that stuff happened. You've heard us talk about it, but I'm looking at Fangoria's website at an article written by Amber T. That is how they signed it. I don't know Amber's last name, but if that's good enough for them, then it's good enough for me. The article says, Heart Eyes, Mason Gooding and Olivia Holt to start in slasher rom-com. Werewolves Within, Josh Rubin will direct from a script co-written by Freaky's Christopher Landon and Michael Kennedy. The two of them wrote Freaky together specifically. And I think they've worked on like a couple of other things together. But yeah, Mason Gooding is obviously from the Scream franchise. He's one of the core four as we know it. And then Olivia Holt is in Totally Killer, which I have not seen yet, but I know that that is the Kiernan Shipka movie. And it seems like she plays a supporting role in that of some kind. I definitely need to watch that soon. It has been on my list, but as you know, we are bombarded with constant media all the time, and I just have not gotten to it yet. But I am very, 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 very excited for this. We don't know a ton yet. There is a little bit of a synopsis. It says, when the Heart Eyes killer strikes Seattle, a pair of coworkers pulling overtime on Valentine's Day are mistaken for a couple by the elusive couple hunting killer. Now they must spend the most romantic night of the year running for their lives. And I'm assuming that they fall in love in the process. Maybe I'm wrong. Spoiler alert. I don't know. But listen, guys, I need you to manifest with me. The second that I heard this news, I was like, well, I would love to get both Chris and Josh on at the same time to talk about this movie a little closer to its release. And Michael as well. If we can get all three, that would be fantastic. But yeah, so let's go ahead and put that out into the universe and say that that's going to happen this year. I don't think that we know much about when to expect it or anything like that. We just know that it is a project that is underway, and we're going to keep that in our pocket, and we have something to look forward to in the future. This is a quick letter to our editor, Chelsea. Chelsea, if you could send over a fruit basket or something to Amber T from Fangoria, that would be fantastic, because Amber is basically a co-writer on this week's episode, as I have learned from another one of her articles that Terrifier's David Howard Thornton, who plays Art the Clown, is officially set to play Steamboat Willie, or Mickey Mouse, in the new upcoming Screamboat. Chelsea's probably thinking, go fuck yourself. I do not send fruit baskets. I edit your fucking podcast for less money than I should be editing it for. And I have specifically saved you from a bunch of mess on this week's episode. So eat my ass, Sean. I think I just channeled Chelsea specifically through me. Yes, but it's funny because I wish so much that this news was specifically being disclosed between me and Steve currently, because Steve is just not, as he's vocalized many times on the show, Steve is just not into the whole public domain, childhood trauma. I don't remember what it's called, but just the whole thing that we're doing right now of turning a bunch of Disney, what is commonly associated most with Disney property, into different horror movies right now. But let's read a little bit of Amber's article. She says, quote, Terrifier's David Howard Thornton, yes, Art the Clown himself, is heading into the public domain sphere, with Variety reporting today that the actor has been cast as Steamboat Willie in the upcoming Mickey Mouse horror comedy Screamboat from director Stephen Lamort. I think I'm saying that correctly. Screamboat was announced earlier this year, just a few months after Steamboat Willie, the earliest iteration of Disney's iconic Mickey Mouse, entered the public domain. The film will be released via Iconic Events Releasing, the same company behind Terrifier 2 and the upcoming Terrifier 3. A quick synopsis of this, which got me really excited, I'll tell you why in a second, but the plot synopsis reads, quote, Screamboat follows a group of New Yorkers on a late-night ferry ride that turns deadly when a mischievous mouse begins a rampage, targeting unsuspecting passengers. The unlikely crew must band together to thwart the murderous menace before their relaxing commute turns into a nightmare. The second that I read that, guys, I thought to myself, how do we get on this set? I have put a mission out there. I texted Steve and was like, we have to figure out how to get onto some horror movie set. I want to die on a movie. I want to be in the background. I want to do a little something. There's got to be a way for us to do that. So keep your manifesting fingers crossed for us this year, because I really want to do that. And I feel like that's totally possible. I have a plot in mind of how to make that happen, and I don't exactly want to divulge all of that right now, but let's just see if I can pull it off. That's another thing to like keep in the back of your mind. If mostly horror can die in a horror movie or have some sort of background noise in it. But back to Amber's article, she says, quote, Variety also let us know that alongside Thornton, Screamboat's cast includes Alison Piddle from Stream, Amy Schumacher from The Mean One, I think I'm saying that correctly, Jesse Posey from Teen Wolf, Jesse Coe from Cobra Kai, Rumi C. Jean Lewis from Hightown, as well as other horror veterans Jarloth Conroy, George A. Romero's Day of the Dead, and Charles Edwin Powell from The Exorcist 3. Oh shit! That's fucking awesome. In a statement, Thornton expressed his excitement at turning a childhood classic into what will surely be nightmare fuel. He says, quote, I am beyond excited to join this incredible cast and bring Steamboat Willie to life with a horror twist. Screamboat is going to be a horrific and hilarious big screen thrill ride that fans won't want to miss. That has made me personally more interested in this project than I was before. I was definitely going to watch it. I have like a thing specifically for really old, like vintage Mickey. I don't expect to like love this by any means. As I've said before, as me and Steve have both said, like we're not the biggest B flick fans in the world, but especially if you can get a bunch of friends together, like I see this being a fun time, and especially knowing that he's attached, I think that he is a great sort of like character actor like that, like the creepy silent sort of monster creature actor, and knowing that he's going to be behind whatever mask they put him in for this gives me more hope that it's going to be pretty intense and brutal, and just fun. Like I just expect it, I don't know, for what it is. I think it's going to be a good time, and I'm now more excited than I was. So we'll see when that comes. I think it said 2025, but we don't know much else past that, but eagerly waiting. In other news that I'm almost certain that you've already heard about and that I have no clue how to feel about, they are making a sequel to Practical Magic. Before I go into any details about that, I just have to say Practical Magic is obviously a movie that I have brought up many times on this podcast. It's a movie that means a lot to me. It makes me think of my mom. It makes me think of growing up in the 90s. And yeah, it's just a comfort watch for me. There's something, there's this charm and there's this nostalgic charm to that film that I think a lot of people can relate to. I just threw it on the other day. Actually, I threw it on the eve, the very last moments of the eve of me turning 31. I was having a bit of an existential crisis. I popped it into my VCR. Yes, I watched it on VHS, and it helped me ring in 31. So yeah, it's a movie that has built quite a cult following. It means a lot to a lot of people, and it is interesting to live in a time period where so many things from the past are being retouched on so constantly. We're getting a lot of, especially like the witch movies of the 90s. They did a remake of The Craft. They did Hocus Pocus 2. I believe that there's a couple other things that I'm probably not thinking about at this moment, but I didn't see The Craft. I think I remember seeing that a couple people liked it. I know that Hocus Pocus 2 mainly got negative response. I don't know what to think about this. One interesting aspect is that there are other books, which I'll talk about in a second. Let's just jump into an article, because I believe that Esma Mazio and Andrea Mandel from People do a little bit of a better job organizing some of these thoughts than I will. So let's jump over to their article really quick. They say, Nicole Kidman confirms that she and Sandra Bullock will star in the Practical Magic sequel and says there's a lot more to tell. The Oscar winner, 56, confirmed that she will reprise her role as Gillian Owens in the sequel to the 1998 Practical Magic in an interview with People on Thursday, June 13th. She shared the news ahead of the premiere of her upcoming Netflix film with Zac Efron and Joey King, A Family Affair. Bullock, 59, will also reprise her role as Gillian's older sister, Sally, Kidman says. Kidman goes on to say, quote, yes, I will be in it, and Sandy will be in it, and that's that, she laughs. There's a lot more to tell, which is why we go, okay, this is kind of interesting now to be able to do this. Kidman adds, we found a way in. People first reported that the duo was in talks to star and executive produce a sequel to the 1998 fantasy drama on June 10th, and it seems like a handful of other people are returning to the project. Akiva Goldsman, the writer behind A Beautiful Mind and who is also one of the co-writers on the original screenplay, is set to write this new one. I believe there's also some producers that are returning, so all of that makes, like, it gives me hope. It makes me feel that maybe this could be kind of interesting, though my personal worries are that charm that I was talking about. And I think that charm exists in everything from the 90s aesthetic of everyone's wardrobe, to the texture of the film that they clearly shot on, to so many things. And I worry that what they're going to try to do here is, update it. They're going to try to make a sequel and update it, and it's going to feel like the latest season of Sex and the City or Hocus Pocus 2, and it's going to look too new and clean, and it's going to date itself in an attempt to connect with like younger modern audiences. It's going to date itself in this weird way, and I think I worry that it could miss the mark the way so many other things have done in this attempt to modernize and be relevant with younger audiences of today. I think what they end up doing is like pushing out the people that loved the original material, and then also not successfully connecting with younger audiences anyway, so I don't really know what I would want a sequel to this movie to be or to feel like, but I know that personally, if it just felt like they made a sequel, if this movie felt like it was made in the 90s, but it had some better effects, but other than that, felt like it was made in the 90s and just found recently, I think that's what I personally want. Maybe I'm alone there. I'm very, very, very curious about this specifically. So if you have any thoughts on this at all, please write us at mostlyhorrormovienight@gmail.com and tell us what you think. Specifically, if you read the books too. I know that it is a part of a book series. I know that there are 3 other books in the series. The first novel having been written in 1995 by Alice Hoffman. I don't know offhand if Alice wrote the other ones because they were written a bit later, but yeah, it looks like there was also 2 prequels: The Rules of Magic, which came out in 2017, Magic Lessons, which came out in 2020, and a sequel called The Book of Magic, which came out in 2021. So all of the other books in this series are much more recent. Dude, she wrote them all. All right. So they were all written by Alice Hoffman. So yeah, I've never read these books. With my love of the original movie, I feel like I have to add it to the to be read pile and kind of get through the whole series. Looking at the covers is making me really excited, oddly. So yeah, if you have read the series and you're a fan of the books and you're a fan of the film, please write us in and write us and tell us what you think about, everything from the adaptation of the original movie from the books. What order, like, did you start reading the books because you saw the first movie and then you ended up liking the book so much more and it tainted your ability to like the first movie, or did the first movie get it right the first time? And yeah, what do you think about this? Just, if anybody who cares about practical magic in any way, write us, tell us your experience, and tell us your thoughts. I'm truly so interested because Steve doesn't get it, guys. Steve isn't a practical magic watcher. But yeah, I guess we have no choice but to wait and see what happens. I'm definitely interested, is what I'm going to say. I'm curious about what's going to happen, and all we can do is wait and see. And lastly, for our news today, I have to tell you guys about an experience that I had this past Wednesday, June 10th, 2024, at exactly 9:47 p.m. I received a text from Steve that said, "Wee woo, wee woo, wee woo," in all caps. I imagine that being Patrick. Wee woo, wee woo. Chels, can we get a Patrick star wee woo, wee woo? But Steve texted me and sent me a link to a post on Twitter. I'm not calling it X. Fuck Elon Musk. But he sent me a post from Twitter that says Henry Selick will direct a stop motion adaptation of The Ocean at the End of the Lane. Guys, get fucked. Are you serious? If you have been a listener for any amount of time, you have probably heard me bring up The Ocean at the End of the Lane at least once, if not multiple times. It is frankly my favorite book. I read it for the first time somewhere around 10 years ago, and it changed my life. I don't know how to describe my relationship with that book. I don't know that like every person will feel as strongly about it as I do. I think there's a certain dissociation and like ripping of one's relationship with their own reality that might be required to really feel the way that I feel about that story. But I love it so much. It's a little novella by Neil Gaiman. It is what completely turned Neil into my favorite author without even having read most of his work. I've since read a lot of his work, but still not even all of it. But I watch interviews of Neil talking and I just get giddy. There's just something about him and his imagination that is so compelling to me. And then to hear that Henry Selick is the one that saw this and decided to turn it into something is amazing. I think I've said before that Ocean is a story that touches on concepts and the way that Neil writes it that are hard to describe. I think I've said that, like, part of me wants to, like, send him illustrations for that book just to see what happens, but also that I think that book should never, I know that there's illustrated versions of it, but I think that I would never recommend on your first reading that you get an illustrated copy of that book, because some of the things he describes in it, I think, are beyond, like, visual, like, comprehension. And I don't want to see them, like, kind of reduced to someone's take on them. I think that you should first experience the abstraction that is conveyed beautifully in Neil's writing before you see anyone else's interpretation of it. But with all that in mind, if we were ever going to get a visual representation of this story, stop motion, I think, is the way to go. And Henry Selick is the person that I trust with it. I guess this has been in talks for a couple of years. I've just now seeing things about, Leica not making any comments on it, but Henry kind of hinting at it. And yeah, we've recently had it confirmed that it's actually, like, happening, that he's developing it and workshopping it around. I'm going to refer to an article from Variety by Ben Kroll that says, stop motion giant Henry Selick is back circling the Neil Gaiman adaptation of The Ocean at the End of the Lane, confirming ongoing work with the English author alongside plans to make the project his next feature. The filmmaker holds Gaiman's 2013 novel in high esteem, calling the book Gaiman's crowning achievement, and envisions the film as a companion piece to the duo's modern classic, Coraline, describing the development title as almost a sequel, which I find really interesting. I'm going to stop there really quick and say that this is kind of how I've seen the news about this going around, because, Henry Selick is most famous for Coraline more than anything in terms of where people are giving him credit, but he was the director of Nightmare Before Christmas. It was not Tim Burton. He was left to direct Tim Burton's concept and story that Tim had developed, but it's Henry that made that movie, and Henry is a huge part of why we even have Leica Studios today. He essentially founded it. I don't know all the history there, but Henry Selick is a stop motion god, and it's interesting to see that people will be excited about this story as a somewhat sequel to Coraline, because it's not. It's in terms of the book, it has nothing to do with Coraline whatsoever. Neil Gaiman's worlds often intertwine. If you're a reader of Neil to any extent, you will probably recognize the name Hemstock throughout multiple of his work. And this book specifically involves the Hemstock family more than any of the others that I've read so far. But it does, I get where Henry's going with it. I just hope that it doesn't lean so hard into Coraline in an attempt to connect with people that are already a lover of that story and that movie specifically, that it loses pieces of Ocean, because Ocean is beautiful and perfect on its own, and it does not need Coraline to stand. But I do see the connections that he's making. Going back to the article, this is a quote from Henry. It says, instead of a child going into this other world with a monstrous mother, it is a monstrous mother who comes into our world to wreak havoc on a kid's life, which is, a big part of what that story is. It's a lot more than that, but yeah. With a honed 35-page treatment and scores of artwork and concept designs, which I'm drooling at the concept of ever getting to see those. Selick is now shopping the project around, hinting at interest from Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio studio, Shadow Machine, while praising Coraline studio, Leica, as home to the best talent and the best resources. after labeling Leica CEO Travis Knight a genius at an Annecy Animation Festival panel on Tuesday. Is it Annecy? I hope I'm saying that right. But yeah, and there's also, in this article, it goes on to talk about Selick also hoping to revive his shuttered project, The Shadow King, which is interesting on its own, but I'm not going to talk about that a ton at the moment. But yeah, I'm incredibly excited for this. I just trust that it's at least going to be incredibly interesting. The only other adaptation that I've ever seen or heard of for Ocean is the play that they've done, which has never been brought to the US, unfortunately, and I don't have the money to fly over to Europe to go see it. But yeah, and also I know that at one point in his development they were looking at live action, and I don't think that that's the way to go for Ocean. I think that stop motion is absolutely perfect for it. But either way, I'm really, really excited. If you have not read Ocean yet, I cannot recommend it enough. Absolutely do that. It is super quick. You have no excuse. It is beautiful. I really think that you will thank me immensely for it after the fact, but I don't know. Either way, I'm excited. And yeah, that's all that we're going to do for news today. Other than that, I just want to tell you guys, I'm going to do a little humble brag and say that this coming Monday, I get to go see a screener of Longlegs, and Steve doesn't get to go because he's going to be in Germany. He's very jealous. Obviously, we've talked about Longlegs on several of the past episodes. I'm expecting it to blow my brain. I have actively avoided so many trailers in the past couple movies that I've gone to for it. I plug my ears and I do the thing I talked about when we had Chris Dudley on. I just make a kind of a quiet noise to myself, and I like push in and out of my ears so that I don't hear a thing. I'm expecting that movie to be stellar. Very excited for that. And then the next day, me and Steve, because he'll finally be back, get to see Kinds of Kindness, the new Yorgos Lanthimos film. So that is going to be very exciting. We have a busy week next week, as well as a very cool guest that we're going to be talking to for a new movie coming out that you probably are already excited for and have on your radar. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. I digress. Let's get you guys over to our interview with writer-director Ariane Louis-Seize, who, again, I apologize for any butchering of the name. This is the part of the interview or the episode where Steve would say, Sean, do you have any final thoughts on our conversation with Ariane? And I would say that it's a great one, guys. We really had a pleasure talking with her. And Humanist Vampire Seeking Consensual Suicidal Person is such a fun movie. It's really interesting in a subgenre so full, so packed. There are almost as many vampire movies as there are zombie movies. Maybe not quite, but there's a lot of them. And for anyone to show up with any kind of new take or anything new to say in that world is incredibly interesting and impressive to me. I had a lot of fun with this movie. I really think that you guys are all going to like it. And I say this in the interview, but the movie, I see it as like a prism that you can have a completely different experience and non-preachy message delivered to you by looking at it with a different theme in mind. It touches on so many different things, and it just makes me beyond excited to see what else Ariane gets up to. And now let's get you over to our conversation with, once again, writer-director Ariane Louis-Seize.
All right. We are joined today by Ariane Louis-Seize. Ariane is a screenwriter and director who has had multiple short films premiere at TIFF since 2018, and her feature film directorial debut, Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person, premiered at the Venice International Film Festival in 2023, and it opens in New York City and LA theaters on June 21st, followed by a nationwide rollout. Ariane, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we are so excited to have you. Heard about the film fairly recently, and as soon as we saw the title, we knew that we were excited about it and that we were probably going to like it. And we're like, well, we have to get you on the show. So we have
the title. It's the little joker in my pocket, the title, because it gets everyone excited, and at first I was like little how can I put this? Like, I mean, if the title was better than the film, it will be a big concern for me. But hopefully, I think the film is like, well, people seems to liked it, so I'm happy.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like I'm so glad that the film lived up to the the title, you know, like you it's really funny. Like there's a lot of bands that I listened to and Sean listened to growing up that would have these really long song titles, and it's the same thing. It like makes you want to listen to the song because it like, so it's a good hook, and also it's just a good name, I guess. Really quick, so we're gonna say this at the beginning of our episode, but this is you know, a film that's in French. You're from Quebec, so French Canadian. Can you say the actual, like the French title of the film for our listeners as well?
It's Vampire Humanist cherche suicidaire consentant.
Which is so much better than the American version. But
regardless,
it's still good.
They're both great. That sounds even more elegant. I'm not even going to attempt to repeat it.
Don't attempt.
It's more balanced because in English, suicidaire consentant, it's 2 words, so it's balanced well the humanist vampire, but in English, it's longer. So
I love it.
It's
Again. Yeah, like Steve said, something about like a long title that is kind of funny, you know, and cheeky, and it caught our attention immediately.
Yeah. I really like long title as well, and I think even if people don't remember the old title, they will like remember Humanist Vampire at least.
The shorthand for it. We've been referring to it a little bit that way too, but we're definitely going to talk about the title a bit and how it kind of plays into everything. But we'd like to start with a question that we ask everybody that we bring on the show, and that is, we're looking for your intros to the horror genre, so like your earliest exposure to horror. Maybe not even the first time you fully watched a horror movie, but maybe a moment when you were a little kid and you snuck out and saw something from behind the couch. Or do you have anything like that you could share with us today?
Yes, I remember like being very scared of Edward Scissorhands. It's not an horror film, but there are some spooky moments, and I remember that I had like trouble to sleep afterwards. And this image, the first time we see Edwards, like he's in the castle, and it haunted me for a while. But I also remember a film called The Hunger. It's a vampire film with David Bowie, Suzanne Sarandon, and Catherine Deneuve. And I think I was too young to watch that film. It's very sexual and very like bloody, but I think it's like the film who like start my passion for vampires.
Nice.
Love that. Yeah, Edward, I remember being young and just being kind of creeped out by the look of Johnny Depp. Like just something about his face even in that costume was a lot to me, so I definitely get that.
And with like expressionless, and he's like, it's uncanny a little bit.
Yes.
So
100% uncanny. It's human but not quite human, and just
exactly.
Definitely get that.
As pretty as that movie is, it is also very like uncomforting. So, you know, pivoting to Humanist Vampire, you talked about watching The Hunger, having this love for vampire films, but where was the starting point for this? I heard in an interview you saying that you had the either you or Christine, your co-writer, you had kind of the Craigslist ad for Humanist Vampires, like a joke, and that led to the movie. Like, can you walk us through like what started the idea?
Oh yeah, I just had this flash about this humanist vampire who is looking for a consenting suicidal person, and put some Craigslist ads in a journal, and I don't know exactly where it came from. It's just like it's a flash, and I pitched it to Christine because I was ending the writing of what I wanted to be my first feature, but it was super dramatic, and the writing process was so long and hard, and it was like too dark for me at this time. So I just decided to trash it and to do something very more like fun, and I wanted to be playful. So yeah, I had this idea, and I asked Christine if she wants to write it with me, and it was during COVID, so we really had fun to like create those weird and lovable characters. I don't know what else to say, because it was like very just a flash, and she wasn't into vampires. She know nothing about vampires, but she's a big fan of coming of age stories, and she had this bittersweet tone in her way of writing. So she was compelled by the pitch of the story make her laugh, and she decided to dig into this with me. And yeah, I wanted, like, our goal was to do a luminous film about death. So yeah.
Love it. I think you nailed it. It's funny. You immediately jumped to Craigslist. I see that the title, it could be a potential online dating profile bio. It could be a great costume at a Halloween party, and you're just explaining it to everybody all the time. Maybe going around with like a notepad or something. And
it give you like the tone of the film right away.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because it's gonna talk about death and suicidal thoughts, but in a playful way, lighter, like something tonal, a lighter tone. Sorry, my English, by the way, is not 100%. No, I'm improving every day, but yeah.
We're killing it.
We're here to give you reps as well.
Yes.
No, your English is wonderful. We appreciate it.
Yeah, completely understand you. It does. It sets the tone perfectly. To kind of let people know that, hey, we're going to talk about some really intense and important things, but we're going to do it in a personal and like a way that we feel, not lighthearted in the sense that we're dismissing it, but in a way that's digestible to talk about. It's
and like delicate.
This movie
too.
Yes, This movie talks about so many important themes, and we're going to get to a lot of those definitely later in our conversation. I want to talk a little bit about the coming of age aspect of it. You said that your co-writer is a really big fan of those films, and I think vampire stories serve really well to that kind of approach. So I just wanted to talk about the coming of age aspect and the conversations about identity. This movie feels like it's a really personal film for you. So could you talk a little bit about that and maybe what the process was like getting so personal with your co-writer and developing the story?
I'm a big fan of coming of age too. I like when I was teenager, Little Miss Sunshine, Juno, Harold, and Maude was like my favorite movie. So it's like I have this kind of, I don't know, I like misfits. So genre film and coming of age film are like the perfect nest for misfits characters, and I like mixing tone as well. I guess it's personal. Like, I'm not a vampire, and I haven't, like, it's not personal in that sense, but I really like to dig into a sexual awakening when we are teenagers, and I thought, like, usually we see vampire characters very sexual, and I thought it can be interesting what if a vampire is like, she's not ready to do it, and she's not like feeling good in her body, and she tried to find her her limits and play with her her limits and the limits of others. And I think it's that part of me who still try to figure out those things about me sometimes. And yeah, I think like teenage years are really really incur in all of us, so it's very easy to go back to these teenagers of us, and our little teenager inside of us. It's the roots of a lot of our like flaws and how we construct ourselves. So I always like to dig into my young Ariane inside of me. Yeah, I just picture like, I think I picture myself, what if I was a vampire and I had to kill people to survive, but I don't want, like, I think my life is not more valuable than the life of others. So it's a big issue. Like, yeah. So it was so fun with Christine to just talk about that and just try to find a way that she can, that Tasha, the main character, can just like survive ethically, like find a way to feed her ethically. And
yeah, no, absolutely. It's vampire movies are such a massive, well, vampire stories are such a massive subgenre of story, and especially horror. And I think as an audience member, you're always thinking about like, what would I do if I was a vampire? How would I handle it? And yeah, it's funny, while watching the movie, I was like, if I was a vampire and she wrote this movie about me, it would have been called like Vigilante Vampire Seeking Glorious Bloodlust Revolution, and it would just be like Blade meets V for Vendetta and Eating the Rich and stuff like that. But I just love I love this take on it. And yeah, I was curious, if Sasha was kind of a reflection of how you saw yourself potentially handling the new powers and needs of being a vampire. Would you say it's pretty accurate?
Yes, and I think I'm someone who really likes to dig into like personalities, and I like to see, like, I don't think people are bad or good, and I like to see what's behind that. And so I think I can be this vampire who try to like really be certain that you want to die, and if you really want to die, I want to make sure that you it's for the good reason, and you did all you want to do, and at the end of the day end up like change your mind.
Yeah. It's almost like that Jack Nicholson Morgan Freeman movie, The Bucket List, where they both are finding out they're dying and they're doing all these things they always wanted to do. It's kind of like that, but not. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
I am curious. So your leads in this film, and forgive me if I'm not pronouncing them correctly, but Sarah Monpetit and Feli Antoine Bernard are both fantastic. Yes. And I read about kind of, how you felt about them during casting and how they were interacting with each other. I'm curious, I guess, specifically for Sarah, what made you feel like she was the right lead? I've heard about her performance in Falcon Lake. By the way, I've wanted to watch it for so long. But and then also how her and Philly Antoine worked together, like when they were on set.
Sarah, I mean, I knew she was made to play a vampire because she really have this, like, I can see her being a 68 years old woman trapped in a teenager's body, because she really have that old soul, and she's mysterious, and she's I don't know, she have this old world inside of her, and she was singing old song too. Like she had old taste. So I really liked her, and I was certain that she was like the best humanist vampire that I can meet. But I still auditioned her because I wanted to see if she was funny, and she was funny in a very weird, specific way, and that was what I was looking for. So yeah, it was sure in my head that it will be her. And when I mixed her with Félix Antoine, like the tone of my film take place in front of my eyes, it was like no going back. But the funny thing is, when I called them to tell them that they got the part, they both told me that they were sure that it was like the worst audition of their life, because it was like awkward but so funny and so tender at the same time. But this awkwardness wasn't an act, it was true. Like they were like, they didn't know how to act in front of each other. So yeah, I don't know why it was so funny to realize that was true. But afterwards we did a lot of rehearsal, and they were like very good to work with each other, and they are both very intelligent and creative, and yeah, we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, their chemistry is so good, and you can just kind of feel that it works. Did you tell them after? Like, did you tell them that, like, you know, you both thought that this was an awkward audition?
Yes, and yeah, they both like cried apparently after, and they were like, sure, it was
poor guys.
Yeah,
That's
but it was.
Oh no, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but I was just about to say that it was exactly what I was looking for, this weird rhythm and weird energy between them, like two small animals who try to like tame each other and understand each other. Two weirdo, but not on the same beat.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah,
I love that description.
I love that. I love that, you know, they went in with an idea and weren't getting what they wanted out of the situation, and that ended up being perfect for the role. Like, I think that's beautiful. I also love the idea of you potentially like contacting, you know, Sarah and being like, you know, you seem like, you know, an ancient old creep, and I think you're like perfect for this movie.
Yeah. But I did not tailor that the first time I talked.
You probably worded it better. Yeah.
And it was fun when I meet with Félix Antoine. I didn't know him as an actor before, and I was auditioning actors for a while, and nothing was good, honestly. And I thought, like, I think my dialogue are shits. Like, I don't think maybe it's me, maybe it's not them, because some of them was good, but the fit wasn't there. And when Félix Antoine arrived in audition, I was like, oh my god, okay, my script is good. Like, I it's him for sure.
Yes.
So sometimes you think like maybe it's you, but it's just to find the right fit, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so like uh, uh, it's so how do you say that when
Like a weight off your shoulders.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were writing a very specific kind of awkward quirkiness, and you just had to find that awkward quirky person to
Yeah, exactly.
to meet it.
We consider this Paul's character on the spectrum, but we never like it's not really a subject in the film, a theme. It's more like this is this character, and I'm so happy because a lot of time in Q&As after I present the film and festivals, there are some people who are on the spectrum who realize like that Paul is on the spectrum, and they really connect with him. So I'm really proud of his work and my work, and how like what we wanted to do with that works and is believable for them. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's incredibly powerful. I know that's something we've talked about on the show before, but like representation that isn't like spotlighted, but just like inclusive, you know?
In your face, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Having people like it's not a movie about that, but you know, and an autistic person is represented, or someone on the spectrum is represented in the movie, and I think that that's so powerful.
Exactly.
And
I think it's important to
it's
do
very
this kind
important.
of
Yeah. Your movie talks about so many different important things. One of my favorite things about the movie, I actually wrote this in my notes while I was watching it, was your movie kind of feels like a prism to me, where you can get a completely different narrative and like commentary on something based on what angle you are watching the movie at. Like, I feel like I could watch the movie 5 different times, thinking about one of the things that you're kind of talking about, and kind of get a different story and journey every time. You talk about so many things. Yeah. And I love that. I mean, you talk about, you know, obviously the coming of age aspect, identity, sexual identity, which I've watched some of your shorts and I see that as a reoccurring thing. And you just mentioned, you know, teenage sexual awakening, suicide, euthanasia, just so many things. I could go on. I do want to touch on suicide a little bit. It's, you know, it's something that is right in the title of your film. It's obviously a very dark and touchy subject that touches a lot of people close to home. So I'm just curious, you know, your film tackles this very sensitive subject, and I'm just wondering how you approach that subject to ensure that it's handled with the necessary care and respect.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's a dark subject for sure. Like I said, I wanted to do a luminous film about that subject. So I don't know. I just like to put a lot of empathy towards all my characters, and it's just the empathy that I have naturally that helps me and guides me towards the writing process. And me and Christine talks a lot about how why Paul want to die, and is it like related to the fact that he find like no purpose in life because he feels so disconnected with the people around him. And it's not that he is not is like when he tried to attempt suicide, sometimes when you approach death, it gave you like a bigger like taste for life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he had this pattern of always trying to kill himself, but he never managed to do it. And we talk a lot like that about, but did he really want to die? Is it just because he feels so alone? And so yeah, we take this subject very seriously, but after that we just try to like make a good script, and we hire how do you say that, like BNL, like people who helps people with
Oh, like a psychiatrist? You're like
no, more like a group, like
Like an
uh,
organization?
yeah,
like a group
exactly.
therapist, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, an organization, and they walk through the scenario with us and guide us a little bit here and there, but mostly it was taken with empathy already. So
Yeah.
yeah. And what I really thought that people, like maybe in interview, people will talk more about this subject, but and maybe some people will, like, I don't know, find it not appropriate to do a comedy about suicide, but no one challenged me about that, because I feel like people walk out of this theater with a big smile on, so they don't realize that it treats really deep subject, but I think it allows like parents who go to the theater with their teenagers to talk about those subjects. So for me, it was more to create not a platform, but a space, dialogue space around those subjects, more than being preachy or
making a comment about it. Yeah.
Sure. Opening it up to a lot of different interpretations, and just
exactly.
opening a well-rounded conversation. Definitely get that.
I was curious. I'm glad that you mentioned that no one has really said anything to the. I mean, I do think if your film ends a different way, maybe like you obviously very purposefully end your film on a specific note that leaves people feeling a certain way. But yeah, I was actually curious about that, if there was any issue with distribution or issue with whatever because of the title and or subject matter of the film.
No, we talk about it before. I had the title for like since the beginning of the writing process now, so I had no intention to change it.
Mhm.
But the distributor still like challenged me a little bit, and but he was convinced it was a good title. It was just like, just so you know, maybe it will confront people, and they talk about putting a trigger warning at the beginning of the film, but I was like, no, but the title is a trigger warning
Yeah.
You
by
know what you're
itself.
getting into. Yeah.
And
100%.
it's not like very serious, like a real trigger warning, but it's a trigger warning, but also you know that it's gonna be light. So they were not hard to convince, and we just prepare ourselves with some answers if some media challenge us, but it never happens.
Good.
And I
good.
think it's there's nothing, I want to stress, like we don't feel that there's anything that people should really find upsetting in the movie. Can't speak for everybody, but like I think it's a very well-meaning, and all of that empathy and stuff comes through. You can tell that it was handled with care, and absolutely. Just we were just curious because there's a lot of people that don't understand. I do want to ask, ultimately, this movie is also a vampire movie. We talked about that a little bit. You've been a long-time lover of vampire movies, vampire stories. I'm curious with vampire lore and so many different takes, like with it being such a large genre, how did you go about establishing your rules to like the vampires universe and kind of narrowing things down? And you have some funny moments where they're talking about, can you go in a church? And she's like, it's more like an allergy and things like that. I love that. So can you talk a little bit about creating your vampire world?
Yeah, it's so fun to play with those rules and making your own because you can basically do what you want because I think they don't exist, so they can't be mad or except Christine and I found a blog run by a quote unquote real vampire who like he was really like strict with rules and sometimes we just had fun reading the blog and some people ask for example do a vampire can be can transform into bat and he was like no guys you have to stop with that like it's not true and anyways it was so silly but we just decided to take the rules that was convenient to us like in our world I think one of the rule who is not very popular in other film is that our vampire age because but they age slower than humans and it was convenient because we really want to have the young Sasha who had this like childhood trauma and explain why she had this like her blockage things who's blocked like block
a blockage
blockage of her thing.
Yeah.
So we decide to create our own rules for that, but the rest is it's the basic vampire rules, and we just play with those in dialogues, and and I like to see my vampires like regular people that we know, but they just have slightly different problems, like a little bit more complicated to be a vampire, but like I have an aunt who is like the aunt in the film, and so I wanted for people to relate with those characters even if they are vampires.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea too. I have to go back to this really quick because it just made me laugh so much. I love the idea that, you know, no one's worried about the suicide or any of the other like really dark stuff, but you got angry vampires reaching out from all over the internet like, what's up with the inaccuracies? Like,
I really like to think that the mother of Sasha have to hunt for all the family for like she have all the charge the charge of the family on her, and it's a little bit the same in the human world. Like I mean, the mother have a lot on her shoulders, and it's the same in the vampire world. I really like this part.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love the construction of the family was very like the dad, you know, just wants he's just like all he can do is dote to his daughter, and then you have the mom who's like trying to keep stuff together, but also it takes a lot out of her. But yeah, the perspective of the growing or the way that they age, I thought was so unique, and obviously it fits exactly what you were trying to do, and is like a fun aspect of things too that's not really revealed until like you obviously understand that they're growing a little slower or aging a little slower, but you don't reveal her actual age until, you know, halfway through the film. So it's kind of like a funny aha moment that puts things into perspective. So I love that. I think one thing I want to focus on, the thing that people know the most about vampires is that they need blood to survive. And when Sasha doesn't kill people, she still needs blood, and so you have these blood packs. Well, Sean wrote that they're Capri Suns,
little Capri Suns.
I'm curious how you guys made those. It seemed like that probably was a fun thing to do.
Yeah, I don't remember the recipe, but I remember that usually blood is like just corn syrup with
Yeah, like food
some
coloring.
color. Yeah, but I thought like Sasha had to drink a lot of blood, and I don't want her to be sick for the whole shooting. So we tried to elevate the recipe, and so we asked her, "What do you like taste wise?" And she was like, "Oh, strawberry, maybe cranberry," and it ended up being hibiscus.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh.
and so at the when we do the camera testing and costume testing, and at these days we had a little blood bar to taste different things, and it was funny. But I
love
don't
that.
remember the recipe.
That's
Oh,
okay. Yeah,
I wanna go to the
love
blood
that
bar.
idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I think I'm going to pitch something to you. I know your film's opening on June 21st in New York and LA. If you do a New York premiere, we got to figure out how to get everyone one of these blood packs
Oh,
Yes.
to
and
drink during the premiere.
I do a New York premiere, so
All right.
I will be on this. I will try to find a way to.
We'll be there
Yeah.
if you need help.
We'll be there.
We'll talk about this
All
after.
right.
We'll
hook
help
up a
you out.
blood pack. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
we'll,
excited.
We'll figure it out.
Maybe like a Bloody Caesar or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
perfect. Sorry, we have so many things we want to talk about. Another aspect that we really enjoyed, and we're thinking about is, most of the time in a vampire movie, not always, but most of the time, you're dealing with one vampire or a collection that completely live together, and their aesthetics are more in unison. But in this movie, you have, the parents, the aunt, you have the cousin, and you have Sasha, and you get to see the parents' home, Sasha's room, and cousin Denise's
Denise,
room.
yeah.
Yes. I just want to talk a little bit about the production design and kind of creating these unique characters, because they all come across so unique. You were talking about, putting personality in them, and you have an aunt that's like the aunt. Could you guys, or could you talk a little bit about, developing your guys' sets and stuff like that, and putting that together?
Yes, it was a big challenge, the production design, because we had all those sets, but also like we had 47 locations in total, so it was a lot of a place to dress up. And in the house of the vampires, we had 2 eras as well. So at first we wanted to like change the walls and put some
Wallpaper.
Wallpaper. And but we had to think this through and being very smart with it. And I wanted to play with eras, of course, because like it's a vampire film, so it's so fun to play with like mixing eras. And but I still want to like for the house of the parents and the loft of Denise to have a different like vibe, and that represent more their personalities. So it was like I can't take a lot of credit except for brainstorming ideas with my production designer, but he did an amazing job. And I remember like the loft of Denise was this huge place, but it was completely empty. No, that's not true. It was full of crap. So he had to like just like take a day to like manage that, to create this. I wanted a lot of lamps, lots of texture, lots of sofas, and so he called me like 3 days after, and he just told me like with his super like his voice, super tired voice, okay, it's ready, Ariane, you can go. And when I entered this place, it was like incredible. Like I was amazed. It goes behind what my expectation.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
I loved her apartment.
It's so good.
I laughed the second I saw it because it's so like it cues you into her character. You know, you had just seen her like younger before, and then kind of the intervention moment. But this was such a look into her character, which I found so amusing. And I don't know, just it came across total like bachelorette young adult, but also who clearly is fine with being a vampire and has like a tinge of sadism. The hooks made me laugh.
Yeah.
Like I loved it. I just have
so
to
good.
applaud that set specifically. It was so good.
that's what I wanted to do, because at first the film was supposed to start in the 50s, and the cousin had like the cousin was the one who changed Sasha into a vampire. So the beginning of their relationship was already challenging, and I had to like cut the 50s because of a budget reasons, basically. And I wanted for this character to like be strong the first time we meet with her, so make a strong impression.
Yeah, she does, and
you definitely did. Yeah.
And the character of Cousin Denise is just so a very, very strong and like different, really defined character, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
The last thing we want to talk about, I know we only have you for a little bit longer, but one other part of this film there's so many great parts of this movie, but the music in it is so interesting. I mean, you start off with this transition into the modern time with this non-diegetic piano that turns into diegetic piano, and then you also have this wonderful scene with Sasha and Paul set to Brenda Lee's emotions, and it reminded me so much of the really slow motion embrace scene in A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. But like the way that you set that with music was so important, and it just really set the mood. I'm curious how you approached what songs you were going to use, and how you shifted from song choice to song choice in this.
For the song of Brenda Lee, Emotion, it was like weeks and weeks of research, because I wanted something romantic, but not too much, and have this like nostalgic tone, and I wanted for the lyrics that that reflects what Sasha was living. So, and when I found Emotion, like I knew it was that one, and I immediately send the song to the producers, and I asked them, okay, this is it, and let's go have it, because we needed to have it on sets. So this was like finding a treasure. And the last song as well, I'm very proud of. It's Dracula Ye Ye. It's Sarah sent me this song before the shooting just to like put me in the mood, and I thought like it was so funny and so like playful that I decided, I did not tell her, but I decided to try to have it, and like it was my little surprise to her. Nice. But for all the rest of the song, it was all original composition for the film, and I worked with an amazing composer. His name is Pilou, and it was our fourth collaboration together. So I already knew that I wanted to play with the eras once again, and I wanted to play with something more orchestral and a light and some bass to like talk about her urge to like to be, because she fights her instinct. So I thought in the music we can like represent her mind and her instinct, and so I just passed 2 weeks in his studios with him, and we just like jam and play. I did not do nothing except telling, like, cheering him up and brainstorming with him. But yeah, it was very instinctive how we worked the music together, and yeah.
It's so important, and it feels so.
Yes.
I'm not surprised to hear that it's all original composition, because it feels so true to the story. So that's
Agreed.
wonderful to hear.
Yeah, it completely sets the tone. Yeah, we have so many things that we could talk with you about, but like Steve said, you know, we've had you for a while. We're gonna wrap up, but before we go, we mentioned a little segment that we call Mostly Horror Recs. So we're curious if you have a horror movie and maybe a non-horror movie that you would like to share with the audience today, something you'd like to show some extra special love today.
Of course. I'm not like I'm not watching a lot of horror films, so my repertoire is more auteur horror films.
Sure.
So Under the Skin, I think it's one of my favorite, and I cannot like recommend it more to your audience, because it's not it's not a vampire film, but it's still non-human characters who wants to experience what it is to be a human. So it was a big influence between me and Sarah during our conversation of creating our characters. And also I do my own homage scene to this film in my film, so maybe people can like try to find what
Spot
is
it.
my
Interesting. I'll
Yeah.
have to rewatch it with that in mind, because when I think of Under the Skin, I can only think of the beach scene, so I can't. I'm only thinking of that right now. But all right, I'll have to watch it again. And
okay,
yeah,
I can like talk to you more about it, but
Yeah,
I
we'll
will
talk
keep
later.
it more mysterious
Yes.
for your audience.
Absolutely.
And one of my favorite film is the first film of Jane Campion called Sweetie, the first feature film, and it's just amazing. It's weird, lovable misfits characters. Her visual style is so strong already, and it's a film that people don't talk a lot about, because we just I feel like her career started at the piano, but the one she did before like is a little gold
Gem.
of
Yeah.
mine. A gem, a little gem.
Yeah, little gem.
Yeah, it's a lot of people didn't know Jane. I mean, like, people in film knew about Jane, but like Jane, even when Power of the Dog came out, a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is a good director." It's like, yeah, she has all these other great films that came before this. So it's funny when that happens, but I love that. I love Under the Skin and Sweetie. Those are great recommendations. Ariane, really appreciate the time. We'll have to connect on the New York premiere, because very excited to see this in the theater as well. But thank you again for the time. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to our conversation with writer-director Ariane Louis-Seize. And thank you to Ariane for joining us and letting us butcher her name multiple times on this episode. I apologize so much once again. But now it is time for our segment, Mostly Horror Recommendations of the Week. And once again, it's weird to do this by myself. I don't know how to feel about it, but I do have a couple things that I can throw at you guys. For starts, last night, in preparation for an upcoming episode that I'm not going to give you all the details about, I finally got around to watching The Pope's Exorcism, or The Pope's Exorcist. I'm mixing things up. I finally got around to watching The Pope's Exorcist, and man, I have no clue how to feel about that movie at all. I'm going to recommend that you watch it because what I can tell you before anything else is that I had a blast watching it. I just don't understand why. I don't know why I had so much fun watching that movie. Because it's not very good. I'm not going to tell you that it's very good. It's kind of bad in a lot of ways, but it feels like it knows that. It's not bad. Maybe bad's not even the right word. It's just ridiculous. It's such a ridiculous film. I actually wrote. I'm going to read you a little bit of my my exact writings for it when I logged it into Letterboxd. But I said, "quote I'm not going to tell you that this was good, but for some reason that I'm still trying to figure out, I had a bunch of fun with this. It's ridiculous, but I think it knows it. I can't fully tell. I know for a fact that Alex Esso can act, so I think the writing and direction for her character was just subtly a parody. The whole movie really feels like a parody in so many ways. IDK, dude, but I had fun." Once again, if you guys have seen this movie and have any thoughts on it, please write in and let us know. It almost felt like Constantine-esque in a way that was kind of fun to me. And there are definitely moments where it's clearly being funny. They made their Pope character a kind of a jokester, or Pope's Exorcist character kind of a jokester, and just it's a natural thing for his character to kind of relieve tension and make light of a situation that is really intense almost immediately after something terrible was happening. But in a way that feels natural. It doesn't feel forced. I really don't know how to describe how I feel about this movie, but I'm going to ponder on it some more, and we will be talking about it in a way a little bit in the future with some stuff that's coming up. So yes, please let me know what you guys think about it. And overall, I recommend that if you haven't seen it yet, if you wrote it off the way that I did, I think you should give it a shot because there is something weirdly fun about it. I don't know if it was just brain chemistry or a lot of stuff on my end at the time, but I had a lot of fun watching that movie when I thought it was going to be a grueling process, frankly. It also gave me a lot of ideas just about like exorcist stories and possession stories, which I'm frankly fed up on. They don't do anything for me for a variety of reasons. I've seen too many of them. There are too many of them. I'm not religious. It just doesn't do much for me to see the same sort of situation play out over and over and over and over and over again, where I'm supposed to just cheer for references, I guess, to The Exorcist. But yeah, something about this stood out to me, and I really can't put my finger on exactly what that is yet. I also want to obviously recommend Ocean at the End of the Lane. I kind of did that at the beginning. I have it written down here to recommend it to you guys, but I did that already, so I'm going to pass on elaborating too much on it, other than pushing one more time and saying, please, 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 please go read that book. Definitely read it before you ever watch whatever movie we end up getting from it. But I also want to hint at something that is coming up in the future. I think this is super subtle, and I don't think you'll be able to guess what's coming up necessarily, but I want to recommend two movies, one specifically that I probably have talked about on here before, but the 2009 film The Collector, starring Josh Stewart and Andrea Roth, and a whole cast of people. But I really had a lot of fun with that movie. I think it feels like it was everything, especially when it came out. It was everything that I loved. It kind of felt like a perfect mix between home invasion movies that I was loving, like The Strangers, obviously, and then Saw. And just kind of like this puzzle making, trap making trickster. If you have not seen The Collector yet, I highly, highly recommend it. The Collection, the sequel to it, is also very good, but I think that I didn't need it. I really kind of love how The Collector ends. Though a sequel to that makes complete sense and is justified and is still good. I do like both of those movies, and I'm going to be doing a rewatch of my own soon. So that's another one. If you guys have any thoughts on that, please write us, let us know what you think. And all I'm going to say is that there's a reason that this is on my mind currently that could be coming up in a few episodes. Who knows? You guys will just have to wait and see. And if you piece it together, then good on you. It is totally possible for you to figure out why I'm thinking specifically about these movies and who we might be talking to in the days to come. But with that, that is all we have for you today. I'm going to try to do this exit segment on my own, which is I'm not the guy that usually does it, but let's give it a shot. All right, let's see how I do. All right, guys, I have asked multiple times for you guys to email about a variety of topics, everything from practical magic to Terrifier, all the news that we talked about, Ocean at the End of the Lane. Just write us about anything that I talked about this episode. Say something like, Sean, you didn't do that bad. Send that to mostlyhorrormovienight@gmail.com. You can also reach us at mostlyhorrorpod on Instagram or mostlyhorror on TikTok and Twitter. Steve, who is not here today, is on all the socials at Steven is Average, and I am on all the socials as Hypocrite Inc. or Hypocrite.Inc. And that's all I got for you this week. We will catch you next time. Goodbye.